mist gives way to moonlight, bathing moss and grass in glow, the forest insects tonight have put on an evening show. Floating through the midnight air, there's a cricket serenade. Enjoy the calm song they share. Welcome to Games in the Glade. This is a stress-free gaming news and reviews podcast. I'm your host, Tina Kelly, and I'll guide you through some recent news in the gaming world and give my review of a game I think you'll enjoy. Today I'll be discussing the Bloodborne PS1 Demake, Space Warlord Organ Trading Simulator, Pikmin Bloom, Elden Ring, with no spoilers, and Sony's latest publishing rebrand. I'll also share my review with you of Unpacking, a Zen puzzle game. To start, I have a ton of news to share with you. I know Halloween was a little while ago, but I'm starting off this episode with some spooky indie news for you that may have flown under the radar, like a bat under the cover of the cloudy night sky, while you were enjoying your spooky evening a week or two ago. Then we'll move on to the big game studio stuff. First up, Bloodborne PS1 Demake was announced to release on January 31st, 2022. It's co-developed by Corwin Pritchard, aka art_minnow on Twitter, who is working on some textures for the characters and environment, and Lilith Walther, aka Botster on Twitter, who is also a lead programmer for Witch JRPG. Walther's been posting updates on the Demake over the past 10 months and finally revealed the release date for the game with a full trailer on Halloween, featuring music by video game music arranger and orchestrator Evelyn Lark. Made in Unreal Engine 4 with the aesthetic of a PS1 game, the Bloodborne PS1 Demake captures the feel of Bloodborne and imbues it with a grainy nostalgia. Many familiar foes appear in the trailer, like angry, nasty dogs that want your blood, and rather large gentleman who wants to hit you very hard with an improvised weapon. My favorite stinky grandpa and gun parry instructor, Father Gascoigne, will also be reprising his role as butt kicker in the Demake. The trailer, which I'll link in this episode's description, shows off several locations like Yosefka's Clinic, the Hunter's Dream, and the Tomb of Erden. The team has included transforming weapons in the Demake, showing off the threaded cane in a video from February 2021. Whether weapons can be transformed on the fly or solely through the equipment menu remains to be seen. But speaking of the equipment menu, the Demake features a circular menu that players cycle through in order to select their weapons, rather than FromSoft's list-style menu with item stats and lore. This and the Demake's many other points of diversion are deliberate. Walther explained in an answer on Curious Cat, which is a place where folks can ask questions anonymously, that the game is not a one-to-one recreation of Bloodborne, but rather an interpretation that has design changes inspired by the limitations of the original PlayStation's hardware, as well as influenced by the culture of that era of gaming. She draws inspiration from Nightmare Creatures and Final Fantasy VIII for various design elements, and says that she imagined the game to be a post-Ocarina of Time PS1 game that would have been a part of a paradigm shift in games. She also references Mega Man Legends as a pre-Ocarina design reference. I think positioning the Demake in this time period, this incredible era where 3D games were being shaped, is a great way of setting expectations for the game's style and handling. After somebody asked Walter through Curious Cat if she intended to finish the entirety of Bloodborne for the Demake, Walther responded that she's doing just the first two bosses and added that she had considered doing more after, but doesn't want to work on a property for years that she doesn't technically own. If you want to check out Walther's original work, you can play Arcus, a fantasy action game, which is free on Steam. Walther also explained on Curious Cat that Bloodborne PS1 Demake will also be free. In other indie news, Xalavier Nelson Jr., the mind behind An Airport for Aliens, currently run by dogs, and the narrative designer for one of my favorite games, Hypnospace Outlaw, debuted a gameplay overview for Space Warlord Organ Trading Simulator at the Dread XP Spooky Showcase on November 1st. Space Warlord Organ Trading Simulator is described as a sci-fi body horror market tycoon game. You buy human and possibly other species' organs on the market, sell it to the people who put in the requests, and try to stay one step ahead of the competition. You also have to manage your cargo to keep it from rotting or eating itself. If juggling profits and inventory maintenance weren't challenging enough, you also need to maintain a good reputation with your clients or risk pissing off the entire universe with your feckless handling of precious meats. Nelson spoke about Space Warlord Organ Trading Simulator with Brendan Sinclair at GameIndustry.biz and described the spark that gave him the idea for the game. He said a strange man walked up to him at the hospital, not dressed in hospital garb, and asked him if he would like to see his insides. Thinking it would at least be an interesting story, if it didn't end in his own death, Nelson assented, and it turned out to be a nurse practitioner who needed more experience with the ultrasound machine. Nelson then got to see his own heart, kidneys, and intestines all working inside him, and said that the visceral tangibility of that experience stuck with him for years. There's something both remarkably mundane as well as incomprehensibly strange about watching your body work, and Nelson aims to blend those two feelings in Space Warlord Organ Trading Simulator, which he wants to be challenging for the player. He said in an interview with Heidi Nicholas at TrueAchievements.com that you should feel uncomfortable with how easy you can see pieces of a human body, even a literal human soul, as a means to a financial end. You should feel uncomfortable with how callously the idea of a dollar allows people to treat each other. Space Warlord Organ Trading Simulator purports to use comedy as a way to access the entire emotional spectrum and make otherwise unpalatable darkness something we can confront with safety and even delight. Lastly, Space Warlord Organ Trading Simulator will have narrative threads that permanently impact the universe of the game and result in unique endings. I've enjoyed Nelson's narrative work in Hypnospace Outlaw, inviting players to explore the story through the development of the in-game online community, so I'm excited to see what he does in Space Warlord Organ Trading Simulator. The game comes to Xbox and PC platforms in winter 2021 with a Day 1 Game Pass release. You can find a link to the trailer in the description of this episode. Thanks to Heidi Nicholas for the quotes from her article Xbox Indie Spotlight, Space Warlord Organ Trading Simulator, which you can find on trueachievements.com. I will link that article in the description if you would like to peruse it. Thanks as well to Brendan Sinclair for the quotes from his article, Space Warlord Organ Trading Simulator Dev on Pricing Organs, Pricing Games, which you can find on gamesindustry.biz. I'll also link that article in the description if you want to read more about Nelson's vision of the game and the gaming industry. And now I don't have to say Space Warlord Organ Trading Simulator again for a bit. Now for some not so spooky news. Nintendo announces Pikmin Bloom, a mobile game app much like Pokemon Go, but with those cute little plant critters from the Pikmin franchise. In Pikmin Bloom, you collect and grow new creatures by walking around in the real world. You gather new seeds to plant in your backpack and grow those seeds by meeting a step goal. You can make Pikmin bloom by feeding them nectar and cause a flower trail to sprout behind you on your walks. Flower trails then cause your Pikmin seeds to grow faster while also populating the map of the world around you with pretty plants. In the trailer, which I'll link in the description, Pikmin are shown sporting flowers and other cosmetics like acorn hats, suggesting that customizability might be an option for some. According to Andrew Webster on The Verge in their article Pikmin Bloom Hands On, the game is more of a passive experience than Pokemon Go. Whereas Pokemon Go was an augmented reality game that brought the fun of Pokemon catching to real life, Pikmin Bloom is walking gamified. The game will sum up your activities for each day to see what you did and how much you walked in a brief video that's then archived in your calendar. You can also add notes or photos to your day to chronicle things to your satisfaction. There are updates waiting in the wings for Pikmin Bloom. According to Madoko Katayama, the user experience director at Niantic Tokyo, there may be more game elements introduced later that could imperil your Pikmin. Perhaps this ties into a brief shot in the trailer where Pikmin are shown ganging up on a big defenseless mushroom. Honestly, I can see this is something I'm going to put on my phone, at least for a little bit, to inspire me to take more walks as it gets colder outside. Pokemon Go got difficult for me to do as I was walking my dog, so I'm hoping that Pikmin Bloom will let me play without having to hold my phone and my energetic beagle's leash at the same time. If not, I'll have to bust out the fanny pack I used to use with Pokemon Go. Thanks to Andrew Webster for their article on the hands-on experience of Pikmin Bloom, which I will link in the description of this episode. On November 4th, Bandai Namco Europe debuted a gameplay trailer that's about 30 minutes long of Elden Ring, the joint production of From Software and George R.R. Martin. Don't worry, I will not be describing the trailer in any detail. I realized after watching about 2 minutes of it that I wanted to save the rest of the game for myself instead of spoiling certain encounters, so I'll simply say that the trailer shows off gameplay as well as the look of the game, which looks very FromSoft. Known best for creating challenging action role-playing games like Dark Souls and Bloodborne, From Software typically combines environmental storytelling, a bleak and ruined world, and a good mix of little beef jerky men trying to kill big lumbering foes or swift humanoid bosses to set the world right. Only time, and maybe the trailer, I don't know, will tell if Elden Ring will follow that style. Elden Ring is coming to PC, Xbox One, Xbox Series X, PS4, and PS5 on February 25th, 2022. Best of luck to my fellow FromSoft fans who are trying to avoid spoilers until then. May the flames and the good blood guide thee. For more daring enthusiasts, you can find a link to the trailer in the description of this video. But please bear in mind that Bandai Namco kept in the first 14 minutes of a countdown clock, so you can skip until you hear a voice say, Peggy 16, announcing the rating of the game. Finally, some Sony news for my fellow Sony cronies. Sony has changed their publisher title on Steam from PlayStation Mobile to a new title, PlayStation PC LLC. LLC stands for Limited Liability Company, for those who may not know. Coming on the heels of the announcement of a God of War PC port, Sony's label change on Steam is leading some to believe that more ports might be in the works. Already, several PlayStation exclusives have made their way to PC, including Horizon Zero Dawn and Days Gone. Upcoming PC releases include a couple Uncharted titles like Uncharted 4, A Thief's End, and The Lost Legacy. Sony has recently acquired a few studios that might beef up the PC side of things, like Nix's Software, who worked on the PC versions of Square Enix properties like Hitman and Tomb Raider, as well as Bluepoint Games, who remade Shadow of Colossus and Demon's Souls. Bluepoint also remastered 3 Uncharted titles, Gravity Rush, and the Metal Gear Solid HD Collection. Perhaps studios like Nix's and Bluepoint will aid in the process of bringing more beloved PlayStation titles to PC, but that remains to be seen. Thanks to Andy Robinson for the article, Sony has formed the PlayStation PC label for its PC games push, on Video Games Chronicle for the information on the name change, the recent PC ports, and the acquisition of Nix's Software. And thanks to Sean Hollister for the article, Sony acquires Bluepoint Games, the studio behind its incredible remasters and remakes, on The Verge for the information on Bluepoint Games. As always, those links will be in the description of this episode. We're done with the news, but before we get to the review, let me take a moment to read you some of the responses I got from last episode's question. Last time, I asked you all to share with me the heartwarming, emotionally effective moments in games that you remember, and I got some very interesting answers. Primarily, many of the moments that moved you were ones that you knew or felt were coming, but still felt deeply when they happened. Secondly, and please don't sweat this, most of your emotionally effective moments were heartbreaking rather than heartwarming, but I think the reason for this is that games as a medium have a very unique ability to touch our hearts deeply due to their immersive qualities. Now, most of the moments you shared with me contained story spoiler information, so I've removed all information that gives story elements away for the sake of your fellow listeners. This will be vague, But if you want details, you can check out the Games in the Glade Asks hashtag. That's hashtag GITG Asks on Twitter. I responded to many of the responses that didn't make the cut for the show there, particularly the ones that I found to be a little too spoiler-laden to cover on air. First up, a heartwarming response from Molly, aka Molly Olive on Twitter and Good Vibes on Twitch, who said that emerging from Vault 101 in Fallout 3 gets her every time for nostalgia reasons. I love games with tie-ins in the franchise, and when it's done well, it really resonates. And if it's a game that you replay a lot, that first sequence when the world opens up can be so exciting and full of potential. And now, for the less heartwarming. Twitter user Slurm316, aka Ewan, said that The Walking Dead Season 1 still haunts him to this day. Twitter user Netty4242 echoed this statement, saying that he had heard about the events of the game and they still hit him like a freight truck. Now, as for the last response I'll recount here, it's not something I expected to hear, but I think it's very interesting. To Be Fair, aka Kath, said that the scene in Doki Doki Literature Club, where a character reveals her true feelings, was unlike anything they had experienced before. They go on to say that it was a part of me I rarely allow myself to think about, and yet she reveals it in a lovely, heartfelt way, which remains a keystone in my life. I think these responses just go to show how powerful a storytelling medium games are, that even if you know or feel that something is going to happen, it's the telling of the story, the acting in the moment, the music choices and the art direction, and the synergy of your experience with the game as the player that ultimately move you. For instance, I always have the same response to a certain fight in Mother 3, where you must fight an unexpected enemy. Even though I know it's coming, even though I've played the game so many times, the dialogue that triggers as you progress through the battle cuts me to the core. In that battle, I just want to put the world back together and make it whole again. But I think Mother 3 is a game that encourages you to make peace with broken things. So I cry every time, but I bear in my heart an appreciation for the story, even through those tears. Thanks to everyone for their responses. I'll pose another question for you to ponder at the end of this episode. Now for our review. Unpacking is a Zen puzzle game about unpacking your possessions after a move. It was published November 2nd, 2021, developed by Witchbeam and published by Humble Games. In Unpacking, players put away the toys, books, tools, decorations, and all the assorted bits of life of a young woman over the course of her life. Through the simple rhythmic act of putting things in their place, you get a better sense of who this person is and what they're going through. On the face of it, Unpacking is simple, but the game has surprising depth. Let's start off with the surface. Unpacking is bright and colorful from beginning to end. Each item signifies clearly, so there is little to no confusion about what something is and where it should go. In fact, there's so much detail packed into even the smallest items that you can tell even what genre a book is that you're placing on the shelf, or identify the movie that a Blu-ray case is, and even see the wear and tear developing on the items that the main character brings from place to place, like her precious piggy plushie. So clear are these items that no descriptions are needed. There's only a few lines of text in the game at all, and they come at the end of each level when the character described her move in one sentence below the picture taken of the room. The isometric style of each room allows you to appreciate the room as a whole without needing to rotate the camera. Everything and every surface you can put things on is in view, and items can be rotated to fit snugly into cabinets, onto bookshelves, and under surfaces, so there's no wasted space. Everything looks like it belongs. From an audio standpoint, Unpacking's OST does what it needs to. The songs that play in each level set the tone for the room. The theme in the first level, the character's childhood home, is gentle and harmonic, but sparse. It leaves room for the player to focus on what they're doing and figure out how to do it. The tone of her shared apartment with her D&D pals, a track fittingly titled Friends for Life, is dreamy and spacious, but still packed with energy. There's a gentle thrumming of a guitar, the humming of synths, some shimmering chimes, and the occasional strumming of an instrument that might be a ukulele, which is an item that makes its debut in a later level. To me, this track felt like the perfect meld of strains, kind of like friends coming together in conversation, each bringing their own unique part and making something new and interesting together. And later, when the character moves in with a partner, the song Infatuation plays, which is slick and sultry, though not as colorful as the rest. It matches their shared space's aesthetic, which is very streamlined and masculine. There's something off, something missing. It's very unlike the songs before it and after it. It doesn't quite feel like her, and neither does that space. All in all, I think Jeff Van Dyke did a wonderful job bringing the rooms to life with each song. Now, music isn't the only audio experience you'll have with Unpacking. I invite you all to play the game just to pick things up and move them around. That is, after all, the core gameplay, moving items from one place to the next. And because it's the core, it shouldn't just look good, it should sound good. And Unpacking sounds great. Pick up a hot water bottle, for example, and wave it around the room. It sloshes just like it should. That butter cookie tin in your old bedroom, well, it's full of sewing supplies now, and it makes just the right rattle when you set it down. Pick up the cup that you used to rinse the toothpaste out of your mouth in the bathroom, and then put it on the sink's ledge. It makes a perfect clunk. But if you sit it on the floor, it makes a different kind of clank. And it makes a clink if you put it on the toilet lid. Every item responds to surfaces in different ways, and it feels magical. But it's no magic. It's what I can only imagine was hundreds of hours of hard work. According to Sanatana Mishra, founder of and designer at Witchbeam, there are 14,000 Foley wave files in Unpacking that play when items interact with surfaces or you, the player, interact with an object. Angela Van Dyke and her husband Jeff are responsible for the Foley work, and I thank them for their unimaginable labor, for it made it so enjoyable to play with each item and see how it reacted to the world around it, from the protagonist's favorite piggy plushie to each new travel trinket she collected over the years. Now for the core of the game. You have seen the piggy plushie. You have set it on the toilet, the kitchen counter, in the shower, and on the couch, all to hear it make a different sound on each surface. Great! Now put it where it belongs. Maybe your bedroom chair overlooking your homework. Or maybe in bed, next to your pillow. Wherever feels right, it is right. And then you get a great big, "You're done" star in the bottom, letting you know that your placements have been validated and you can move on to the next level. You look over each room, let out a sigh of relief, because everything is folded nicely, with no effort on your part. Everything is organized in the shelves to your liking, and the odds and ends have been tucked away into the drawers. When you're done with the box, zoop, it folds and disappears. Perfectly satisfying, because there's a synergy between what the game will accept and your own standards of what's the right home for things. Only rarely did I find that I had misplaced something, and it didn't take long to find where a better place would be for it. But what happens when there is no right place for something? Only once did I run into this issue in a later level. One critical item that was important to the character didn't have a place of importance to rest. I tried to compromise by putting it in the bathroom, but even then it wasn't right. It was outlined in red. I hovered it over every surface that I could, shaking my mouse over the screen until finally a valid place popped up. I had to hide that precious item under the bed. It was the only space left. It felt Procrustean, like I had to chop away bits of the character just to fit her into a cramped space. It felt doomed, too. That place the character had moved into didn't feel right. It didn't feel like home because it didn't honor her important things. It was a living space, sure, but not her home. I think this is a crucial pillar of Unpacking, the way that the gameplay and the narrative intersect to affect the player, and it's so brilliant and seemingly effortless. After all, it's just unpacking boxes, right? But when there's a conflict that requires the player to put an item where it doesn't feel like it belongs, but is the only acceptable place, it generates a sense of unease, which is the perfect foil to Unpacking's normally satisfying gameplay. While certain items have rooms they're supposed to be in, and certain items are required to be in drawers and shelves, you've got a lot of wiggle room in terms of where and how to organize things. You can put all your socks and undies in a drawer and shut it and forget about it. Or, if you want to, you can organize them by color and type. You can hang up your hoodie, or fold it and tuck it away. You can organize your plushies however you'd like. The best way I can explain this is there's no best place for things, no slot that something must fit into. It's not a jigsaw puzzle where one piece must interlock with the next. They just have areas that they prefer to be in. Initially, as Ren Breyer, game artist and designer behind Unpacking, explained in their talk at GCAP in 2019, the game was a puzzle game with strict rules where everything must be placed, but it evolved into what it is now, a Zen puzzle game with the guidelines instead of a hard rubric. And because there's no scoring system, you don't get points for doing it the best or better than somebody else. You're encouraged to find your own solution instead of min-maxing it to the best. And there's no time limits or timers on any of the levels, so you can take your time unpacking without any pressure or the fear of failure. Even if an item is out of place, you haven't lost, Breyer said at GCAP. You just haven't won yet. A quick note of accessibility fits in right here. When an item isn't in place once all the boxes are zooped away, it'll be outlined in a gently pulsing red line. So if that's difficult for you to see due to color blindness, you can change the outline color to green, blue, or fuchsia. You can also make icon sizes larger if visibility is an issue. When you swap to other rooms to put an item away, typically you'll swing from one room to the next, but you can switch this swing slide motion to a fade if that's better for you. You can rebind controls in Unpacking, and if you just want to put items wherever you dang well please, there's a toggle option that allows that. Now, a discussion of the narrative of Unpacking is inevitable, but the narrative itself is a part of the puzzle that you unpack in the game. It reveals itself in the environment as a whole as you progress through the levels, moving from your childhood home into a dorm, then to a shared space with friends, then to a partner's apartment, and so on. But it's also granular, evidencing itself in the items you unpack. Crayons and drawings become Copic markers and tablets as the main character develops as an artist. This is not to say that you have to deeply inspect every object. The vegetable peeler isn't going to tell you much. But certain items stand out as important to the character, like her piggy plushie, which will show signs of wear every time you move. And other items like pictures you put up on her corkboard or fridge show her with her nearest and dearest friends. Maybe the most evident and also funniest sign that showed me that the character had grown as a person was when she finally got matching hangers. No more red and blue and clear and wooden mismatches. Finally, she had grown up. And to my fellow mismatchers out there, we'll get it together. We'll get there. Maybe we can ask for matching hangers for the holidays or our birthdays. I think Unpacking is a game that'll strike a chord with most folks, even if you've never moved from one place to another. It's about what we keep as we grow, the self that we're most at home with. As much as I believe that we're not defined by our possessions alone, I think that the things that bring comfort to us are important to us. And I think that the space that we make for ourselves and each other is a very strong theme. When a person won't make room in their home for you, they won't make room in their life for you. Find folks who welcome you into their lives, who celebrate your achievements and love you and your little things. Do that for yourself too. Make room in your day for yourself. Make space in your room to be you unabashedly. And then, when you've got what you need, make room for the ones you love. In the end, unpacking is about inviting yourself to be yourself and inviting people to express themselves authentically. If you'd like to play Unpacking, it's available on Xbox One and the Series X and S, on Steam and on Switch. If you'd like to hear Ren Breyer's GCAP 2019 talk, which is a great listen for game devs and game enthusiasts alike, you can find a link to it in the description of this episode. Unpacking got me thinking that there are so many enjoyable games out there with themes that you wouldn't expect. Who would have thought a game about putting things away could be so enjoyable, when I think a lot of people view packing, moving, and unpacking as stressful activities? So this week, I want to ask you all what mundane-themed game you love, and what you love about it. Sell me on these boring-sounding games. If you'd like to respond, you can tweet at GamesInTheGlade on Twitter using the hashtag GITGasks, or if you're listening to this on YouTube, you can leave a comment below the video. That's all I have for you today. There'll be more news and reviews every other week, so keep an eye out for updates in your favorite podcatcher or on YouTube, and follow the show's Twitter account at GamesInTheGlade for more. This podcast is supported by Friends of the Forest on Patreon, a link for which I'll leave in the description. Thanks to Puddles of Infinity for the use of their song Porches and Universes, and thank you to Titsay for the beautiful album art. And even though our time together is coming to an end, you can always find your way back here, my world-worn, weary friend. There's a spot here in the clearing, in the quietude and shade, for you to relax a while and listen to Games in the Glade.